AMC's The Walking Dead has long been one of the most memorable and impactful works in the zombie genre. Rather than focusing purely on the horrors of the zombie apocalypse, it instead spends a longer time developing its characters, showing the daily life and survival tactics of these characters, and establishing a dystopian feeling that leaves the viewers wondering, could I survive in this situation? So, if you were placed in a universe where a single bite can change you from loving family man to horrific mindless cannibal, would you know how to survive? In today's How to Beat video, I'm going to be teaching you how to beat the walkers from The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead show starts off following Rick, the protagonist. Rick is a police officer who gets injured in a shootout, and as a result he's confined to a hospital bed in a vegetative state. When he wakes up, he finds no one around him. Everything around the hospital is essentially non-functional. In the show, Rick decides that he needs to immediately leave the hospital and run straight into the city, not knowing what the fuck is going on and also having no clothes. If I were Rick in this situation, I would attempt to take as much medical supplies as I could. In the zombie apocalypse, medical supplies is going to become exceedingly rare, so get bandages and general use antibiotics for future wounds. Addictive medications can also be used as bargaining chips to trade for food or weapons. If your spawn point is in a hospital, you might as well use it. Later, Rick meets a father-son duo that offers him help, and he takes it and stays with them for the night. Personally, I think making friendships at the start of the apocalypse is smart since most people haven't completely abandoned their moral compass yet, and nice people are still plentiful and alive. These friendships are the only ones that you can trust throughout the apocalypse. Afterwards, Rick goes alone into the city on horseback to look for his family. This is stupid. A city is where most zombies are going to be. Rick is not only inexperienced with how zombies work, but also doesn't have a vehicle. Even if the city wasn't completely overrun, he risks the military bombing the city to slow the infection. Rick runs into a zombie horde and ends up trapped inside the tank. He knows he doesn't have long until the zombies finish eating his horse and surround the tank. Luckily for Rick, he is radioed by a man named Glenn who saves him and brings him to a group in the mountains. In the group he finds his wife Lori and partner Shane. However, sadly for Rick, they've been fucking since they thought Rick was dead. Now let's take a look at the current survivor group's location. It's located in Bellwood Quarry in Atlanta, Georgia, according to the Walking Dead film location map. It features a forest as well as a quarry with a little lake in the middle. It's absolutely somewhere you want to visit in real life because it's beautiful, but how about in the zombie apocalypse? The pros is the location has a reliable source of fresh water with fish that is relatively unpolluted, as well as a high ground where you can set up camp and fend off zombies a lot easier. However, the main con is its forested location. According to the Max Brooks Zombie Survival Guide, a forested location is almost always a no-no, since most people die from zombies popping up behind a tree and sneak attacking them. Although this is a solid location for a large group, unless you have enough people to secure the perimeters, I wouldn't suggest staying here. Getting back to the show, the group's first dilemma comes when a member of the group named Jim gets bit, and he tries to hide his bite. The group ends up finding out, and they wonder what the fuck should we do with the dude that's about to turn into a zombie. They decide to try to get help from the CDC facility. However, I think that's a terrible idea because if the city is overrun, the odds of the CDC existing or even being partially operational is just not possible. Now, a lot of you would expect me to say, make sure to immediately chop his head off so he's no longer a threat to the group. However, that is not the best approach here. Instead, I would allow Jim to say his goodbyes and then execute him out of sight from the group. It's important to make sure people who get bitten are still allowed some time with their loved ones and still treated as humans, because if you don't do that, people are going to start hiding the fact they were bitten in order to get the last seconds with their loved ones and potentially endanger you and your group. The characters of the movie never seem to take my advice and they still head to the CDC building anyways, and it's in the middle of a fucking city during nighttime. The building looks completely overrun and abandoned, and they feel like all hope is lost since they're essentially trapped in a city after dark. However, the door opens and the one remaining scientist in the entire facility lets them in. The CDC building is basically a paradise. It's sheltered, has plenty of food and water, as well as hot water to even take showers in. However, like good things, it doesn't last, since the CDC building will self-destruct after it runs out of fuel in order to maintain its secrets. The scientist doesn't want to let anyone out of the building since he wants them to experience a painless death. Although Rick is later able to convince the scientist to open the door for him, it's still a very close call. A more reliable method would be physical torture. But you have to make sure you don't kill him or accidentally make him pass out, because then you'll run out of time and the building will explode. So the torture method I suggest is pulling out the fingernails. It causes lots of pain really quickly, it doesn't result in a lot of blood loss, and victims usually won't pass out or die. So I suggest putting this to the test until he gives you the pin code to leave. After making it out of the CDC, our story then continues with our crew as they attempt to make it to Fort Bennings, which is a military base where they think they can get help. This is a terrible idea. Military bases are going to be the first place people try to go in times of need, and where there are people, there's going to be a fuck ton of zombies. I also mapped out the distance and found it to be 140 miles away from the CDC building, meaning they need to waste a fuck ton of fuel in order to get there. But if the group were intent on going, then they should have been driving at around 65 miles per hour, which is the most fuel efficient speed to drive at. After driving for a long period of time, they run into a pile of cars and can't go any further. Here is where I would suggest looking for shelter for the night before deciding your next course of action. You could drive to a new location or set your cars up in a protective formation similar to that of the AT-ATs in the Battle of Geonosis. This protects against any other humans and zombies alike. However, it removes your option to escape since it's hard to maneuver your cars out of that position. However, before they can do anything, a walker horde approaches. The group decides the best course of action is to hide in their cars, splash zombie guts on yourself, etc. Instead, I would attempt to get in the vehicles and just drive away, since zombies are slow as shit and they're pretty far away. For some reason, people decide to start running into the fucking forest as well, which according to the Max Brooks Zombie Guide is stupid as hell. It's also worth noting that the zombies in this movie are extremely uncoordinated. Their main power is strength and numbers, so if everyone just got in their vehicles and laid low, I predict that the zombies would have just walked past them. Luckily for the group, most of them make it out of this situation. Well, most of them. When Rick and Carl decide to go explore the forest, they come upon a deer. As Carl decides to go touch the deer for some reason, he gets shot by a hunter through the deer. The hunter is a good guy and brings Carl to a family farm to receive treatment from Herschel, who is a vet. Although it may be tempting to decapitate the entire farm's people and steal their food and guns, I suggest waiting it out, since the vet has medical knowledge that may be important to the group. Meanwhile, the hunter and Shane, the dude that was fucking Lori, Rick's wife back at the first camp, go and get medical supplies. They are overwhelmed by walkers and Shane injures his foot. He is able to only escape barely by shooting the hunter in the leg and allowing him to be bait for the walkers. In this situation, I would advise the hunter to make noises and run around and distract the zombies while Shane gets further away. Then the hunter can just run up and catch up with Shane and escape the horde, since the horde can only move at a walking speed. So Shane is able to make it back to the farm with medical supplies and Carl is eventually stabilized. While we're already at the farm, let's do a quick analysis of that location. It's located in a rural setting with prime farmland and livestock, which makes it a sustainable option in the long term. Its flat setting allows you to see zombies and zombie hordes from miles away and allows sniping zombies and intruders alike extremely easy. The only weakness of the farm is the lack of fortification in fences or walls, which makes intruders with vehicles a big threat. The lack of walls also allows zombie walkers to stroll into your farm and eat your livestock and mess up your fields. We start to figure out why this is a big issue. Dale, a member of the group, sees a cow being eaten and is sneak attacked and killed by a zombie. The mistake he made was trying to use a sniper rifle in his investigation. A sniper rifle is a long-range weapon, and if a zombie gets near you, the long barrel makes it hard to maneuver. And if you miss the first shot, you need to spend a much longer time reloading. Instead, I would carry a pistol or a shot-off shotgun to a close-range investigation, because they're more accurate and efficient at close range. Later, Shane tries to kill Rick. However, Rick tricks Shane and stabs him. Shane lets off one final shot that leads the walkers to the farm, and it destroys the entire farm and the group is forced to flee and find a new home. On their way of finding a new home, not a lot of interesting stuff happens. However, Lori finds out Carl has been learning to shoot a gun and she's upset about that. Rick says why not, a kid shouldn't go unprotected. Turns out Lori knows a few things about being unprotected since Shane got her pregnant back in the beginning of the show. Instead of taking morning after pills, she decides to keep the baby. Obvious mistake. People around you are literally dying and you're adding a baby into the equation that simply isn't possible. You'll need more food and more people to protect that baby. Carl getting a gun is a great idea. I suggest that every person in the group should at least know how to shoot a gun, and everyone should be at least armed with a knife, hatchet, or some sort of melee weapon that they can use to kill zombies. Guns are obviously preferred, but melee weapons are better as they don't need ammo. Another suggestion I have is a mask mandate. I know that there isn't COVID-19 in the Walking Dead universe and the zombie virus isn't even airborne, but a tiny bit of that delicious walker blood accidentally spilling into your mouth as you chop into its head will cause you to turn into a bloodthirsty walker. After escaping the farm, the group then comes upon a prison, which they decide must be their new home, so they clean up all the zombies. While doing that, they find food, weapons, and armor. However, they find a few death row inmates as well. If I were in this situation, I would suggest killing all the death row inmates. They were on death row for a reason. The last thing you want is these crazy rapists and murderers running around members of your group and killing them. Now let's quickly talk about how you should be taking out isolated groups of walkers using melee weapons. The show actually does a great job of this. Everyone should stand in a circle, covering 360 degrees of vision. This prevents walkers from sneaking up on you. Each person should only be leaving the circle to kill a zombie and then immediately returning. After settling into the prison, a mysterious disease starts to spread. It's pretty lethal and pretty contagious. This basically carries no real-life implications, since a small group of people can't just suddenly manifest a disease. The disease has to come from somewhere else. But if this did happen, I would suggest everyone quarantining in their cells, because we learned that whoever dies turns into a walker. The last thing you want is for someone to spread the disease around, die in their cell, and then eat everyone as a walker. At this point, the show also introduces us to our first villain, the Governor. He's a psychopathic but effective leader. He's a safe community with walls, firearms, and even a tank. He wants to take control of the prison and Rick's group. Here there are two options. The first option is just to join the Governor. You can probably live a life of happiness within the walled community, which I prefer, because realistically you probably aren't going to be winning a battle against someone with a tank. The second option is to kill him. You have the opportunity many times in the show, such as when you're just having this one-on-one conversation with him. This may not be as successful because if you don't manage to kill him, you're going to turn into Merle, which is someone that attempted to kill him and fails miserably and dies. However, even if you do manage to kill him, there's many people loyal to him that will probably seek revenge for him, and you're going to have an ongoing war that eventually fucks both communities. Now I believe you have what is necessary to survive the zombie apocalypse. If you would like me to cover another movie or future episodes of The Walking Dead, then make sure to drop a comment, as well as subscribing if you enjoyed this video. And good luck to everyone surviving the walker hordes.